Hi, everybody. Raina here from Blue Cypress Books, and I want to welcome you all to Book Banter. This evening, I will be talking with Sarah Guillory. Her book, Nowhere Better Than Here, just came out, and it spoke to me in a way and explained something to me that I had heard about in the news, but I did not truly understand, I feel, until I finished her book. And I'm so excited to talk to her this evening. If anyone has any questions at any point throughout the event, type them in the comments and we will answer them during the event. Sarah is a Louisiana resident. She lives in Louisiana. She's also a high school English teacher, so she knows what she's doing when it comes to books. And I am going to click the button here and invite her onto the screen. Hi, Sarah.
Hey, how are you?
Very good. How are you this evening?
Great, thank you.
Awesome. I said it a little bit in the open, and it is so true. I feel like your book really tapped into something in an emotional way that I think fiction can, when nonfiction really can't. A lot of times we get all of our information there, and we get our emotions, I think, a lot of times from fiction. And could you give us like the little, I always like to ask for like almost an extended elevator pitch. Tell us a little bit about your book to start.
Okay. So yeah, my book is about 13-year-old Jillian Robichaux, who lives in Boutin, Louisiana, which is way down south, and it's sinking. And she doesn't really understand that it's sinking until she experiences a flood, and it's like 100-year flood. And so her school gets shut down and she gets displaced, and she has to go to another school about 45 minutes away. And so she starts fighting to get her school reopened. And then as she learns more about what's happening, the states have decided not to fix the roads and bridges. So there's that. Eventually, they're going to have to move. So she starts collecting oral histories and stories of the community, because she realizes at that point that when the land goes, then the people go and the community goes. And so she wants to save that. So yeah, that's what she spends the book doing.
I love when young people get motivated and are willing to do those things that adults like don't. And often I feel like it's not that the adults aren't willing to do it. It's just that like they have life, they have jobs, they have things going on, and often have given up in certain ways. And I love that Jillian, not like she makes that step, and she's afraid, but she does it. And I always wonder if there's like any inspiration. Where did that inspiration for you come from? Is it like you or something you wish you were when you were a kid, or do you have like somebody you're watching like around that age that
I mean, there's always a little bit of an author in every character, the good and the bad. Otherwise, you've got to know how some of that feels. But I really wanted to show that resiliency and that stubbornness, that even though it feels hopeless, that she's going to continue to fight and do it anyway. Because that's something that speaks to me very much I'm a runner, and in my writing and in life in general, that idea that small things lead to big things if you just keep doing them. And so that was really important to me. And, one thing that I talk about all the time, which sounds kind of, I guess, silly or goofy, but I taught Old Man and the Sea for so long. And there's a line in that book that says, man can be destroyed, but not defeated. And that line, I mean, just always spoke to me. And I just love that idea of showing that resiliency of humans and Jillian just fighting no matter what.
Yeah, no, I love that. Old Man and the Sea is one of those books that so many schools, high schools teach especially. And it made me I was like, I hate Ernest Hemingway. I do not understand what is going on. Why does everyone love this? And of course, because it's about a 60-year-old man who's at the end of his life. And as a 16-year-old, I'm like, I don't understand what he's doing at all. But when I got older, I read some of his other books. I was like, oh, I get it. This is the Ernest Hemingway that's speaking to me as a older teen in my early 20s. And so yeah, I love you brought that up because like I have Ernest Hemingway in high school feelings.
I hated that book. When I had to read it in high school, Old Man and the Sea, I hated it. I said, this is
Yeah.
the worst ending I've ever read. And then I started actually teaching it because I taught a group of mostly boys and they were really into the outdoors. And I was like, okay, this book is short and it's about fishing and they're going to like it. And so we read it. And once I started teaching the book, I realized this is one of the most hopeful books I've ever read. That like, no matter what happens around us, we still have the power within us to keep going. Like we are never defeated until we ourselves give up. And I love that idea. And I like that idea. I think Jillian learns that as well, that we're not done until we give up. And so she doesn't give up for the most part.
Yes. You do a beautiful job showing us like the fight for her town and just to let people know what's going on. It mixed with the idea that, you know, how is her and her family going to keep going? I mean, can they stay or do they move? And if you move, is it giving up or is it living, you know, continuing? Right. And I very much enjoyed that about your book.
Thank you.
For sure. So your book was recently picked as the representative of Louisiana for the National Book Festival. How did that happen?
I don't know.
I love it.
It was such an honor when I got the email that they had chosen my book to represent Louisiana in DC. I was floored. So it was amazing. And it was just this weekend. So Saturday, I was in DC at the book festival and it was so much fun.
I mean, it is amazing. Like just your book represents a piece of Louisiana. And they put it in the youth category, which is, it is geared towards middle grade, but I read it and I loved it. And I think that adults would love it just as much as kids. And also like, it's a great one to maybe read either together if you're still like reading books together, but at least simultaneously, you know, even if the parents are reading it on their own and the kids reading it on their own, there's a lot to talk about both with like growing up and just the state of the world and especially Louisiana. Did you ever live further down? Like, I know that you're up closer toward Baton Rouge now, but
no, I've always lived around Baton Rouge. I moved here when I was 8. So
how did you do research for this book?
Obviously, I read a lot of stuff I didn't even need. I actually read scientific journal articles on ecology, and then I didn't need any of that. But I don't know. I was just like panicking.
Whoa.
So I read. Go ahead.
Oh no! I mean that's I love that because you did all this research, and Jillian in the book finds out this job of being an ecologist even exists and what that means and that she's really interested in that. So was that your idea from the beginning, or did you like happen upon that career for her as you're like gathering this information and reading these journals that you didn't ultimately need?
That was always my idea. So that was kind of why I started reading a lot of those ecology stories too, because I'm like, okay, if this is what she wants to do, then I need to know more about what that looks like. Because originally when I wrote Jillian, she was 17. I originally wrote this as a young adult book. And then, because that's what I wrote. And then at my agent's suggestion, I completely rewrote it as middle grade. And she was right. It fixed everything that was wrong with the book. And I fell in love with writing middle grade. I was reading middle grade some, but I was terrified of writing it. But to answer your question about the research, so I read scientific articles. I read books about coastal erosion, and there's one called Bayou Farewell that was written, I think, in the 90s. And so I read that one. And then I went down south. Of course, I have some friends who are from there. And so they live in Baton Rouge now, but their family lives down there. So I went and visited their family and listened to stories and things like that. So that was a lot of fun too.
Listening to the stories,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's special when you get to hear stories like that, because that's stuff you can't find in pictures and in
Right.
articles even. I mean, sometimes, but those stories, that's really great. Did you record any of them like Jillian does?
I didn't. I just took notes and listened. And a lot of it was about shrimping and shrimp boats because Nonnie shrimps, and it was going to be a larger part of the book, the more time spent on the boat and things like that. But I didn't end up using a lot of that. So I got all the technical terms for certain things so that I could use that. And then I didn't end up using any of that. But he did tell me a story about using real ducks for duck decoys, which is big time illegal. And that story made it in the book. I did use that story of when he was a kid doing that, and I put that in the book. So,
which I love, because it's just a little like, we do what we have to do to, to get along down here. I kind of love that. That was great. I love that. That's a true story.
It is. It's absolutely a true story.
Sometimes,
there's a story in there. Sorry, there's a story in there. It's the same area, I think, where they're telling stories where the guys, the 3 or 4 about painting the windows shut or whatever. That was my great-grandmother. That's my favorite story about my great-grandmother. That was my great-grandmother who got on the painter who painted her windows shut. So that one made it in there too.
That is hilarious, because we had our house painted not too long ago, and the windows were painted shut, and we had a little of a, you have to go, cut these, like, no, the painting's done. And I'm like, well, but I can't open my window. And so when I read that part of the book, I just put me right back to, that's right. That is right. These people were not the best painters. I was like, vindicated from this middle grade fiction novel. I was like, yeah, see, proof. I was totally right. Other people feel this way, not just me. I love it. What you said that you were reading some middle grade. Did you read any middle grade, like, kind of in research or in preparation? Maybe not research, but like in preparation for writing this? Now, you did say that it was originally a young adult. So anything, middle grade, young adult, in preparation for this book?
No, I didn't read any fiction for this book, other than just in general continue to read in my area. So, but it wasn't like I pinpointed, okay, this is the kind of style or feel or even a comp. No, I didn't. I'm real careful with that because I don't want any undue influence. I want to make sure that I don't accidentally have any influence like that. So I normally don't choose fiction books necessarily to read when I'm doing that. Maybe if I were writing like 2 different points of view and I wanted to read some books with 2 different points of view and see how different authors do that. But this one wasn't like that. So no, I didn't.
Yeah. When in Carrollton, I also kept, like, I love travel. I love maps. So I love trying to figure out where you are in this book, like in the reality of Louisiana. So Carrollton in the book, that's the name of the town that is just a little bit further north, a higher ground, where they end up having to go to school for a while and deciding. Some people move there and some don't. And I like loved trying to figure out where that is. Did you, when you were,
don't try too hard.
That's what I was like, when you were like plotting out this book and you're like trying to piece where you are, did you really did you just sort of invent it, or did you like look at a map and go, okay, like this is how far it would be from here to here, and that would be high ground? Like, did you really plot it out even though names are changed and such?
Yes and no. Not with Carrollton so much, a little bit, but definitely I had to figure out and make sure that Thibodaux and Houma, I was about right with the drive, since Thibodaux and Houma are real places. Then I had to kind of figure out where I was. So on the map, and it's been a long time. I mean, this book's been out for almost a year. And, you know, it was sold 2 years before that. So it's been a while since I worked on it. So don't hold me to any of this. But when I was looking at the map, I'm pretty much like I'm left of Grand Isle. So it's in between there to the left of Grand Isle when you're looking at the map over this way. So I tried to figure it out, but it's definitely not exact. It's definitely not exact.
Well, I do appreciate that though. Like you mapped it out and then like tweaked it to fit where you needed it to go. I kind of love that.
Poetic license.
Yes. And that's what you get to do with fiction. You can just be like, but I need to move the town just a little bit. It's fine.
Right.
I remember when I drove down through Grand Isle and stuff for the first time, because I've been here for 18 years now in New Orleans. And it was sort of this area that I had heard about, but I didn't know anything about. And then one day we're just like, let's go, get in the car, let's go, take the drive, and let's go in that direction. It's beautiful. Like the area is beautiful. And it's so like with all these little bridges between the islands. And I loved it so much. And since then I've been back many times, just to do the drive. It's beautiful. So another thing that I really loved about your book is getting in those communities, like in the community, and getting the story of mostly Jillian, but like her whole family. And I don't know how much you thought about putting, how unique is Jillian's story? If you took Jillian out of that area and you put her somewhere else, like she's very much shaped by her environment.
Product of her hometown. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I really wanted to show, that she feared very much her loss of identity. That when she was no longer from Boutin, who was she? Because it mattered so much to her. And she already kind of had her life mapped out. Like she planned on living there, and, you know, she wanted to graduate from high school where her whole family has. So that was really a big loss for her, not just her hometown and all of those things, but herself. She was very worried about losing herself.
I really feel like being in the city and being in cities, like even where I'm from originally in Florida, it's not a huge city like as big as New Orleans, but it's a city, and people take for granted like the smaller towns have this identity as well. That we in New Orleans, we're like, New Orleans, you know, people love New Orleans, people hate New Orleans, but like people that are from here, you're always coming back to New Orleans and all this. But I think that's more so even in a smaller town. And I never wanted to leave home. Like I left home for a completely different reason. And a lot of people, if they feel like from the outside of small towns, they think, oh, well, everybody's waiting to get out. You're just waiting to get old enough or whatever and to get out. And if you don't get out, it must be certain circumstances kept you there. But I love that view that you gave us with Jillian too, as that's not accurate for her.
Thanks. Yeah, exactly. I mean, my first book actually was young adult Reclaimed, and the girl wants to leave. She wants to get out of her small town. She wants to get out. But that is not everyone's story. I met a teenager, I don't know, I guess it was about a year ago. I was talking to this girl just to kind of about what she wanted to do. And she said, I want a job where I can stay in this small town because I don't want to be away from my family. I want to have my own family and live near my family in this small town. So, you know, that is, I mean, yes, some people do want to leave, but some people don't.
Yeah. And I also love that Jillian has this motivation to help in a realistic way. I feel like a lot of people either don't know how, or in a lot of situations, in these panicky type situations, you're like, okay, well, let's just put a bunch of sandbags, right? Like do something that's like instantaneous and you can see it and feel it right now, and it's going to fix something for right this second. And she's like, within the span of the book, gets this like opportunity to kind of see that perspective.
Yeah. And, that was sort of hard. I always wanted to write a coastal erosion book, but, I had to really think about how does she become aware? Like, how do I show her becoming aware of the situation when she's always lived in this situation? Because it's not a hurricane or anything. Coastal erosion is this very slow, not as slow as we would like anymore, but slow process. And so the flood at the beginning of the story, that's how I got my in, with her all of a sudden sort of waking up and people starting to talk about what was going on. And that's based on the 2016 flood that happened here. So that's when I started writing the book, after the 2016 flood. We did not flood, but my high school, we took in displaced students. A lot of my colleagues did flood. And so I just saw this coming together of community. And I remember some of our sports teams, they got together and went to teachers' houses and helped them gut and clean out, because, everybody was so busy with different cleaning crews, and it was just everybody coming together. And that really also inspired this book. I want to make sure I showed that, that Louisiana, we come together in these moments and we help each other. And I really wanted to show that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love.
Go ahead.
Oh, I love how you show it both in Boutin, where the community that is affected is helping each other, but then also in Carrollton, that community is stepping up and making space for the kids in the school. And so I love that. It's the ones affected and everybody on the outside is stepping up to help as well.
Right. And I wanted to show the different ways of helping. So Jillian doesn't want to leave. And so she's collecting those stories and doing that. But Maddie, she has a different perspective. That is her name, right? Because I start forgetting names, right? Maddie.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm so bad at names anyway. Good. Okay.
I love it.
Maddie,
I'm the one usually forgetting names. So.
Oh, I'm horrible at it. And it's crazy. I can't remember my own characters' names. Maddie does want to leave, but it's not that she hates Boutin. She just has a different view for her life. So she helps in a different way, right? She starts wanting to help people get those grants to move. And so there's so many different ways to help. And I wanted to show that as well.
Yeah. Well, and when Maddie does that and Jillian feels betrayed in the beginning, it takes a minute to step back, because I'm following Jillian. I'm on Jillian's side. I'm with her, right? And Jillian tells me basically I should be mad at Maddie, and I am. In the beginning, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's been betrayed. But of course, just like Jillian, because I'm following along, she realizes, there's different ways to help. And if somebody does want to leave, we're not doing them a favor by only giving them help to stay. So yeah, and that was great, because you got me, essentially. I was there. I was with you. And also, like, this is a true, like, this is the best review moment that I have, and I will be using this as a bookseller to sell your book.
Thank you.
I read it, and then I listened to it more recently because to prepare for this. And when I'm listening to it, something was different from when I read it. And Jillian has her speech when she finally stands up and she's doing, I can't remember, they're at the Wildlife Center. Is that
Wetlands Discovery Center?
Wetlands Discovery Center. So, and she has her speech, and she's talking, and I'm tearing up. Like, I'm driving down the road, and I don't know what's happening. Like, I'm realized, I'm like, oh my gosh, am I tearing up over this speech that I've actually read, and I knew it. And that's my best review bit. Like, y'all you have to read it or listen to it, either way, because it'll get you. She's got this moment where I felt that, and I want to ask you. That's not a question. That was just a congratulations.
Thank you. I do want to say, I cry every time I edit. I cried every time I edited that speech. Like, every time I got to the end, I would tear up. So, and I don't normally cry over my work unless I'm frustrated with it. Like, no.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm not really the type of person who cries over books. Like, I'm emotional, I'm connected to them, but I'm like, that was sad. And then I'm done with that book. But sometimes it catches up with you and you're like, okay, you're right, Jillian. Do you know if anyone is teaching your book or plans to teach your book? Because
I don't know. I would love it. Anyone listening, thank you. I would love it. I don't know. So when I was in DC, and I have to say this is, I'll tell you one of the best moments, because like you said, you think adults would like the book. Well, I mostly only hear from adults so far who've read the book. It's mostly adults who are reaching out and telling me how much they love the book, which I so appreciate. But obviously, everyone keeps asking me, what are the kids saying? I'm like, I don't know. I haven't really talked to any. So I was standing at the table, and Louisiana had the longest line out of any table because we were handing out Mardi Gras beads. So we're handing out Mardi Gras beads, and they have a poster of my book. And a little girl walks up and she tells her mom, she was like, hey, I read that book. And I was like, hey, I wrote that book. So I think she was from Maryland. I'm not exactly sure where she went to school, but I just got to talk to her, and I was trying not to cry because I just was very overwhelmed that she had already read the book and loved it and was talking to me about it. And so that was so awesome. And then after that, I had a couple of, I think, 6th grade teachers say, this would work really good in class because it goes with some of the science that they teach. So I have not heard of anyone actually teaching it, but that would be lovely.
Yeah. If you need an endorsement to anyone, I'm here. All of Blue Cypress is here because Louisiana schools should be teaching this, but not just that, like schools around. This is happening everywhere. And also, if you're in Kansas and you don't have a coastline, you need to know it exists, right? It's so far away from, I think there's a whole lot of the country and the world that's so far removed from it because you're just never at the coast that it's easy to just not think of coastal erosion. Like, oh, that's a thing. And it is literally way over there.
Right.
But no, schools should be teaching your book everywhere. Yeah, I don't know how that happens. You actually might know how that happens. Being a high school English teacher, do they make it on the list? Do you get to choose? How does that work?
It depends. Every school is different, and what curriculum they use, I think, is different. I think some schools give their teachers that autonomy and some schools don't. So I'm not sure. I guess every school would be different, but I can definitely see that cross-curricular with, I mean, you've got English, ELA, you've got the science. I think that could all tie together. So,
oh yeah, for sure. Well, I've definitely seen what you're talking about though. At schools here in New Orleans, we do school visits and book fairs and things. And some schools are like, yeah, they don't have to check with anyone. The librarian is just like, yes, bring this and this and this and this. And other schools are like, let me make a list. I'll get back to you in 2 weeks. Because it has to go, right. Whoever it is that has to approve every single choice, that happens. And then I just get the list of approved options at the end. Well, what are you doing next? Are you working on a new book?
I am. Nothing that has been announced yet. So nothing I can really talk about yet, but I do have another book that I'm working on. I actually am under a pretty tight deadline for edits right now. So I have to get it to my editor by the end of next month. And I've had a week off because I've been in DC. So I'm a little stressed about that, but yeah, I'm working on a new book. I don't know. I think I can say, the bare minimum is it's about a girl and a bloodhound.
All right. Okay. Is it adult or is it YA middle grade?
Yeah.
Okay.
Middle grade. Yeah. I'm sticking with middle grade.
I think there are so many amazing middle grade books coming out that have come out in like the last year and that I know are coming in the next like 6 months or so. And I am absolutely here for it. I feel like middle grade had there was just nothing going on. I said that out loud as a bookseller. Okay. For a little while. Lots of entertaining things, but nothing that was stopping me in my tracks. Nothing that was like sitting with me for days afterwards. And I thought that was a detriment to the kids, especially. I mean, I'm just like, I can read whatever, but there's when kids like 12, like 9 to 12 ish were coming in and looking for something that was maybe a little heavier, had a little bit more substance. Right. And we were always going back to the classics, which is great. But speaking of bloodhounds, like Where the Red Fern Grows is amazing, but it's dated, you know. But that's where you are.
Sad.
And sad. Oh my gosh, yes. So I really do feel in the last like couple of years and coming up, there's a lot of great middle grade that I can be like, do you want to be, do you want it to hit your heart a little bit? Okay, cool. I do have things for you. Do you want to be
absolutely?
Yeah.
I was terrified of writing middle grade. When my agent suggested it, I was very intimidated because middle grade writers are amazing. And I was like, I'm not that talented. Like, I don't think I can pull it off because I'm very wordy. And to me, middle grade authors say a lot in a small amount of space, like poetry, and I'm not good at poetry. So I was terrified, and I'm glad I welcomed the challenge because I like being challenged, but I loved it. But man, I mean, I was reading Kate DiCamillo and I'm like, no way I can write like that. I cry every book I read by her because her words are so pretty to me. And Erin Entrada Kelly is so amazing. And I'm like, I can't write like that. So yeah, there's a lot of really beautiful, great stuff. Woke. What is Woke's first name? I'm bad with names. Lauren Woke. Echo Mountain. Oh my gosh, so love Echo Mountain. Just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So yeah, I really lean toward those books now a lot because they're just so well done. And it takes my breath away. I'm reading, I'm like, how did they write like that? It's so gorgeous. And I just read The Truth About Mason Buttle. I haven't read that. It's phenomenal. It is phenomenal. I wept and wept and wept. And it's a sad book, but more of a heartwarming book. It was really, really good too. Yeah, really good.
There was a book that came out earlier this year by Jillian McDunn, and When Sea Becomes Sky. I love that so much. Have you read that?
No, I've been wanting to because I keep seeing it, and I believe that was the North Carolina book at the book festival. I'm not sure, but I swear I saw it on a table somewhere. So
that would make sense. It's like very different than your book, but at the same time, there's a piece of it where it's dealing with coastal erosion and the climate changing and what that means. And there's less rain in this area at this time. And then that makes things happen. But it's in the book in a way that we're not shying away from anymore. It's a piece of the puzzle of the things that are happening to these kids throughout their summer. And when I was reading your book, I was like, it reminded me of that in a lot of ways. And I truly love that book. And like I said, I think it came out in May of this year. So another one that, it's going to affect you and it's going to teach you a little bit. But it's not heavy-handed at all at the end. Like that book sat with me for days, and your book sat with me for days afterwards. And those are the good ones. Like you close the last page, and it's not over. Like that's the good stuff.
Absolutely, it's why we read.
Exactly. Yeah. For the stuff like being entertained is great, but the ones that sit with you later, the ones I can talk about more and more and over, those are the ones that we're here for sure. Do you have any other events coming up? I'm going to link to your website here so people can follow along with you, see what's going on as you...
I don't know. I do, but I don't know. I want to be careful because I don't know if one of them has been announced and I don't want to steal anyone's thunder.
So, all right. No worries.
So I have one coming up in October. And then I'm also doing a book club event at Red Stick Reads in Baton Rouge, which is an independent bookstore here in Baton Rouge. So I'm going to be doing that in September.
Oh, that'll be fun. Do they have is it a kids book club? Do they have a kids book?
It is. I'm very excited.
Ooh, I'm going to have to shoot them an email and be like, how do you get the middle schoolers to show up?
Yeah.
I was like, I would love to know how that's going. Yeah. Well, I linked to your website so everybody can follow along. You can see all of Sarah's work there and information about events as they pop up. So you can go out and see her maybe sometime. And yeah. I want to thank everybody for watching. I see you. I see your numbers out there. And Sarah, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. All right, y'all.